Well, hello, everybody. This is William, starting in the William Show here on Investigators News 2, Ellie's channel. Anyway, it's Monday, the 11th in the year of our Lord 2023, and we've got a bunch of news here for Monday. Usually we're kind of in a dearth for news, but today I've been drowning in it. So, there's a thing that's come out on the net that in a little town in Texas, Edna, the police department there and Texas Rangers have been looking for a suspect, and they found the suspect. He was a undocumented individual here in the United States who had outstayed a visa, 23-year-old male, and he, I guess, broke into a home. He's been arrested for breaking in and theft before, so I'll assume that he broke into this apartment and took the life of a little 16-year-old cheerleader there from Edna that cheered for the high school team. She was found in her bathtub, having been brutally stabbed. We don't know what the reason was yet from the criminal, but he is being held on a $2 million bond and is looking at a capital murder charge, so he can get the death penalty apparently. So that's, yeah, it's about 50 miles or 100 miles south of Houston, or north of Houston. I'm not sure which, but near Houston. All right. We have a letter being signed by a bunch of state governors being sent to both the Secretary of State and to Department of Homeland Security. They're asking that that the agencies repatriate individuals that are organizing and participating in and using divisive rhetoric and protesting against U.S. policy with respect to what the direction of Congress wants here in the United States. So we have a bunch of people here on student visas protesting in our streets, organizing some of these vile protests, even ones that, end up with people writing on the White House fence. So I'm going to go through the list of states that were involved in that, and you can see if your state did or didn't sign this. So Arkansas, Alabama, Alaska, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Virginia, West Virginia, and they're requesting renewed vetting of these foreign student visa holders for supporting terrorism. And I agree with that. Look, people have freedom of speech, but people don't have freedom of speech everywhere. If you're a citizen of the United States, you have freedom of speech. If you're a citizen of someplace else, that's fine if you have freedom of speech. Protest there. Don't protest here. If you're here and you're being given a way to come to the United States and get a university degree, you're invited here. You should treat us like you've been invited. Okay. Enough of that. Afterwards, there was a son of Hamas, one of the Hamas leader, gave a speech at a university, and he's tackled the question of anti-Semitism with respect to the Gaza-Hamas war. And he says that in his speech, he exposes that Hamas has been engaging in a holy war to wipe out the Jews, not displace the Jews, but to literally wipe out the Jews. So that is genocide, and Hamas is engaged in it. So, moving on, in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu has pronounced that this is the beginning of the end for Hamas in Gaza, as more Hamas fighters and other terrorist fighters from around the world are surrendering in numbers. The captured fighters have been seen on television and other newscasts. This war has been more photographed and videographed than any other war in the recent past. So Israel had captured some fighters, whether they surrendered, however it happened, and they were seen stripped down to their underwear and blindfolded. And that creates a public outcry. But I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing. When you get somebody that is as dangerous as a terrorist, this isn't just a criminal. These are people that will use any tool as a weapon. Not only against you, if you're the opposing team, but they'll use it against each other if one of the other people in their group step out of line. So they had to be stripped down to their underwear for a number of reasons. We're going to go over those reasons so that people understand it more understandingly. They're not going to be kept that way. All right? They're just being processed and moved out of the area. If it had just been a normal capture from just another military operation and they had checked to make sure that they had no more weapons, they would likely be marched out of the area with just a guard. Okay? But that can't happen here because these people have been known to use explosive vests and belts and shoes, so they have to be treated very carefully. All right, and let's talk. It's okay. So the prisoners have to be completely vetted. So also all their belongings are separated, all right? And each one of these prisoners given a number right then and there. And they go through all their clothing, all their documents, anything they have on them, looking for information, intelligence information, so that the Israelis can continue to prosecute the war. They're also doing it to make sure that all the weapons have been secured and the prisoners, and so the prisoners can be sent to appropriate areas of processing. Now, when they process them, they have to look for what these individuals were involved in, whether they were officers or weapons makers, bomb makers, just fighters, or people just did transportation or food services. You know, in a military organization, everything has to happen. So they want to break down who each person does which jobs, and depending on the jobs they do is going to determine the amount of security they need. There are some individuals that are just flat more dangerous than others, and they have to be kept track of. Now, when you have a bunch of prisoners, militaries don't use the bulk of their military to handle prisoners. Okay? What happens is they're processed, they go through medical treatments if they need it, they're checked for wounds, they're checked for if they have infections, if they're have lice, things like that. All that gets taken care of right away. They get cleaned, then they get new clothing. They're broken into the groups that they need to go into, and then intelligence officers will come in after they've been settled, okay, and question them. And a lot of times these fighters, they just want to talk because they've been treated well. They know that what's going on there isn't going to be not in their best interest, because they've been protected not only from the Israeli fighters, but they've also been protected from their own fighters. So I just threw my page around here. And once they're, within their military confines, okay, we went through that. Prisoners end up taking care of the prisoners for the most part. They'll do their food preparation. They'll have people who are involved in mechanical issues in the military, and they'll use those skills so they can take care of, changing the light bulbs, making sure that beds have all the parts. If a bed's coming apart, they'll take care of that kind of maintenance. They have other prisoners that will do, general cleaning. They'll have other prisoners that will be doing the washing of all the clothing and the bedding. They'll have other prisoners that are involved with religious issues. Okay, so that's going to happen with them. Now, I've seen Israeli female fighters bringing in detainees, female detainees, and they're treated treated as well. But what happens there is they go through and remove all their clothing down to their underwear as well, and then give them a special, it's like a dress, but they bring the clothing out with them. And so that the women prisoners have a full dress that covers them so that they don't have to worry about their modesty. And that is all done with Israeli IDF female fighters. So, they get questions by intelligence to know, what their functions and loss were, and any details that can help Israeli operations that are currently, in battle. And, when they do the questioning of them, first what they'll do is they'll separate them and question them individually so that they get individual answers to the questions. Then they may bring them into a group, get blindfolded so that nobody can see who is there, and question them as a group to see if these stories change. And it's a humane way of doing the questioning, getting the information fairly quickly, and not violating any of the Geneva Conventions, so that they're not, dealt with, so that they're not abused in any way according to Geneva Conventions. Even though if the Israeli military had been taken hostage, they'd be treated much differently. So, once all this is done, then they're just basic prisoners, right? And they have their prison to run, and they get to do, according to Geneva Conventions, what basically every male on Earth gets to do. So they get 8 hours work day to do whatever work can be found for them, right? In Russians in Ukraine are doing things like building pallets so that they can, wooden pallets, so they can go out and use it for shipping and whatnot. So they'll find them a job that's useful for society. They'll get three good meals a day, okay, and usually cooked by their own people. All right, so it's not like Arab people trying to eat Israeli food. It's Arab people eating Arab food, and they'll see that their religious needs are met as far as praying. Nobody wants to deny them of that. And if they have good behavior, all right, and seem to be cooperating, they'll be, offered other activities in their kind of downtime. Maybe, watching a soccer game, or being offered additional books, or, board games, things like that. They want to keep detainees' minds healthy. You don't want them becoming depressed and slipping into mental illness. It's not in anybody's best interest, okay? So detainees after a war should be well kept, let's say that. Now, where these folks will be, eyed by all the world because of the amount of videography that's going on right now in the world. And, the Red Crescent gets to visit them once a month as well and make sure that they're not being abused, make sure that they've had enough to eat, they're not being going without the calories they need, make outside to the detainees, and for the detainees to send mail out to their families or friends, however it works, after, of course, Israeli intelligence looks through those letters and make sure there's no important information that can have a bearing on their operations. So if that shows up in those letters, it's just redacted, and then the letters continue to go out. So Benjamin Netanyahu has now called for more Hamas fighters to surrender, and that they'll be kept safe if they do surrender. Yes, they will be stripped and blindfolded, but they will also be safe not only from Israeli fighters, they'll also be safe from their own fighters. Okay, so if you're, I want people to know that if you're a person who's considering surrendering, you're going to look at the fact these guys have been stripped down, have been blindfolded, have been organized as a good thing. That's not a negative thing to them. They want to be safe if they surrender. They don't want to end up in a place where there's retribution from within their own group or even from outside their group. And these fighters are being removed out of the battle zone as quickly as possible, okay? And they're going with armed convoys. They're being protected. So if you're a Hamas fighter and thinking about surrendering, this is probably a good time. Things are functioning well with the organization the Israelis have for prisoners. Okay, so that's important to know. Now there's concerns in both Washington, Israel, and internal forces of Israel and even external forces. You've got Egypt right there. You've got Jordan right there. To the north, you've got Syria. So they're concerned about this war in Gaza spreading and getting more out of control. And that's one of the things that have been going on in the governments this weekend is discussing how and if these things start to happen, what they'll do about it. Now, currently, United Nations is basically apoplectic about the demise and the loss of life of many of the Gazan citizens as the fighting continues in Gaza. So I agree with them. Citizens shouldn't have to be harmed. Just general people, right, that are not part of the war fighting. These are people that are innocent. The innocent civilians should not be hurt. But here's the problem. These innocent civilians should be moving out to a safe place. All right? And, as long as Hamas continues to fight in and around these citizens, the war will go on and more citizens will die. And, I'm sad about that. So, this is information just to general citizens of Gaza, right? We're not looking down on innocent people. Everybody has human rights, but in a battle zone, you're going to have to be proactive, all right? if you plan to survive in a battle zone that's like this going on in Gaza, where entire buildings are being blown down, where terrain is being moved, you're not going to survive if a battle breaks out near or around you. You need to be out of that area. Okay? So you have to be proactive. You should go down to the, if you can at all, go down towards the Egyptian border, so that as soon as that's possible, you can cross over into Egypt. Now, Egypt's not going to take everybody and settle everybody there, but what they will do with the UN is take care of refugees until they can be sent to other places that the people desire. Okay? So that's the one thing innocent civilians need to do right now in the short term. Okay? After that, their number one concern is water. Their number two concern should be food. Their number three concern should be shelter. Okay? And number four has to be about leaving the area about to be in a battle zone. If you stay in the battle zone, here's what you should do for those who find you. And that's likely to happen. So this is a little rough to hear. But if you can be tattooed or get indelible ink right on your body, your name, where you come from, your citizenship, and also your blood type, because they may find you simply wounded, and having the blood type can save your life. Okay? So yeah, I'm just saying, please, as soon as possible, move to the Egyptian border, where you can find temporary safety there. And, you know, they're likely to put you on a boat or an aircraft and send you to one of the countries in North Africa, if you choose, like Libya. Let's see where some of the So if they do, I suggest you take the transportation that takes you through the Suez Canal, all right, and not down into Lower Arabia, where there's less food, just generally less ability there financially to take care of yourselves. Okay, so you're best off to route yourself towards Syria or Turkey even though if it's closed right now, will likely open up because there will be so much public outcry in the world. But don't expect to stay in Egypt. Egypt has to use that Suez Canal, and they take care of all of it, and they have to take care of the security of it. And they can't have terrorism around it. So don't expect to be staying in Egypt for any period of time. You should expect to be sent to a second country pretty quickly. And you know, Jordan's right there close, and they may accept you as well. Now, moving on. What's going on with Iran? You know, first of all, they're processing the uranium to make a nuclear warhead. And after that, they're likely to move on to a hydrogen bomb. We need to think about that. Next, their great ambition, after, you know, the United States being humiliated by being pushed out of Afghanistan through their proxies, they're going to want to do something. And so the key here is they're going to use Arabic proxies to push the United States, or at least define the actions of the different forces' rules of engagements in the areas of their operation. Even if they can't push them out, they're going to try to find out how those forces react on a day-by-day action, okay? And they're going to be concerned about air, ground, and sea elements of how those rules of engagement in those areas are. So Iran's looking for every opportunity to destabilize the United States here at home, and of course to push U.S. military forces out of Arabia. So there's a number of places where they're going to concentrate their abilities, all right? And they're going to be at choke points. So in the Gulf of Aqaba, right? Then you've got the Gulf of Suez, the Suez Canal, the Western Mediterranean, the Black Sea. All these things are targets of Iran. And they'll use, like the Straits of Hormuz and whatnot. Let's go through there. Now remember, Iran traffics in the manufacture of arms to these failed states and regions. And when those regions do their proxy work, Iran just considers those people's, the damage to those people like is going on in Gaza right now. They look at that as just collateral damage. The world sees a near genocide happening because of the war in Gaza with Israel, okay? But the people who really pushed it in Iran just see all these deaths as simply collateral damage on the way to their objectives. Now, Iran's a theocratic dictatorship. And they're trying to exert their power both religiously and militarily. And they believe that, non-believers should be taxed. And because they're not receiving a tribute from some of these places, they're going to use their military as much as they can to destroy them, because they have religious optimization, basically. Okay, and the first thing they're gonna go to is maritime choke points, like the Bab el Mandeb Strait, the Hormuz Strait, the Suez Canal, because this gives them a great amount of power. So you'll notice in the Gulf of Aden that the Houthis are firing missiles into the Red Sea, all right, and the Gulf of Aden. And they're monitoring the maritime traffic in those areas. So 30 to 60% of the world's commerce moves through these choke points. And it's not just goods, it's energy as well. And they have the ability to monitor global shipping, not through just their intelligence, but we have open source information on all these ships through what's called ADSB. It keeps track of the ships at sea so that they don't have collisions and so that they can be staggered and given directions so that they don't pile up right before one of the choke points, okay, so that these choke points move smoothly and the most amount of traffic can go through them at a time. And they use that against us. They take and monitor that shipping information, and it's just a matter of time before they find a proxy to sink one of these ships if they get an opportunity. As this goes on over time, we can expect these proxies to become more and more bold. And eventually, they'll sink either an American ship or a transport ship that American military ship is escorting. And when they do that, okay, they're going to try to take, if they get a chance, American hostages, because they can use that as a bargaining chip. So we need to be thinking ahead of what's going to happen here, and this is likely to happen if they get a chance. Now they're going to avoid. Iran itself is going to avoid attacking U.S. ships directly, so they're going to use the proxies, because in the 1980s. One of our ships hit a mine that had been laid by Iran. And what it did is it blew the undercarriage out from this destroyer. Well, it just happens that the only thing that was left was basically the deck. The rest of the ship was split in half. But this crew just happened to be the best trained crew in the Navy, and they were able to strap that ship together and get it to port, when for all intents and reasons it should have gone down. And this was during the Reagan administration. There's two things you don't want to mess with the United States. One is its ships, and two is its oil. We get really angry about messing with the price of gas in the world. It's an excellent way to get yourself wiped out, okay? And that's just exactly almost what happened. Reagan said, well, we're going to have a proportional response to this. And it turned out within an 8-hour period, the Navy went in and wiped out half the Iranian Navy in 8 hours. Either destroyed their bases or sunk their ships. 8 hours, boom. And then they brought it to a halt just to see, because they were concerned about the amount of destruction that was going on. They stopped it early and reassessed, because when these big battles happen, this is the biggest naval battle since World War War II, things can get out of hands quick. And people on other ships can violate rules of engagement and force engagements that would never have happened otherwise. And it just gets to be a bloody mess. Anyway, Iran kind of learned its lesson that way. It was a good plan they had. So Iraq, that they were at war with, they were going to stop the transmission of the oil out of Iraq. So Iraq got hold of Kuwait and said, look, let's reflag the Iraqi ships so that we get the oil out of the Gulf and Iran won't strike us. Good idea. And Iran said, we have a new plan. We're going to take out the Kuwaiti flagships as well. But there's got to be some clause at the end of Sun Tzu's Art of War manual that says, don't mess with world gas prices. It's like the third rail. If you touch it, bad things are going to happen. It's going to be arcs and sparks for you. So what will happen is these smaller countries where there's fragmented governments, where they can use people against the people's own best interests by providing them weapons, training, and motivation. Okay, so we know that's happening in the world, and there is concerns of widening war in Arabia and Israel. Moving on to Ukraine. So from what I've been seeing, we're moving on to start the process of admitting that perhaps Ukraine cannot win back these territories. Now, the Europeans already know this, but the American press hasn't gone through it, or at least they haven't decided to share their beliefs that Ukraine can't win this war, all right? They'll use plausible deniability to the last moment with propaganda. You can expect that out of any governments that are at war. Okay, so it looks like there's going to have to be some negotiations. And it's going to trigger people that you didn't expect as these things start to happen. Okay? And we have elections going on here in the United States, and they may try to drag this out, having a settlement until the next election, if they can, so that it's not a bad mark on this administration. Now, it looks like from a lot of the people I've heard from, that although Russia had been adventurous going into Ukraine, it looks like it was more a self-defense action rather than a straight-on aggressive act, meaning that they're not interested in going into Europe and governing them, okay? They're not communists anymore. Communism, you must expand to maintain the communist realm. It's an edict. It's part of the communist plan. Russia's not communist anymore. They're a democratic semi-dictatorship, right? They have oligarchs that are basically find their way to be in power, but they're also Christian. They're also pro-family. So what they've done is effectively engaged in a Russian Monroe Doctrine. Here in the United States, we had a Monroe Doctrine all through the Cold War, and that stated that we will not have communist countries in and around the United States, if at all possible. We will not have Russian gun missiles aimed at the United States in those areas. That was the Monroe Doctrine. It's a doctrine of self-defense. Well, there's kind of a doctrine that the Russians have, and they're looking at it the same way. So they're looking at this Donbass and these three other territories as a way to buffer themselves against attack. So now you've seen in this war that missiles have been fired all the way to Moscow. So it's no joke. Russia does not want to be attacked anymore. They had to fight the Great War, they call it. Great Patriotic War, we call it World War II. They fought almost till they were bled out. They fought till they were white. They do not want to fight that way anymore. And they are pro-family there. They actually pay people to have children. And if somebody female can't find, Russian mate, they're okay with foreign mates coming in and raising children in Russia with their gals. Okay, they are family oriented. They don't want their country to become geriatric to the point they can't defend themselves. That requires a new generation of children. Okay, and they don't want to be bred out by other countries nearby. Now, some nations that are weak will use birth as a weapon of war. You breed out your enemy over time. Just what it is. Okay, moving on. So we know the West is playing the ignorance game that this thing in Ukraine can be won and blah, blah, blah. So the rest of the population of the world can be placated. But we also know that that's going on. And at the same time, this now gives a way for another thing that's been happening in some of the non-aligned nations of Europe, the European nations that have been neutral, like Switzerland and Luxembourg or Finland. You get the idea. There's lots of nations during World War II that had been neutral. But in those nations, okay, there were people who went to those countries from Germany before the war started. And after Germany had been defeated, they planned for the next phase of the war. All right, and they come in different forms. Now, they figured out through two wars that Germany can't conquer the nations around them. All right, and Germany is an expeditionary nation. It's just by their nature. They're controlling. They're very good engineers. They have good, excellent education systems, and they're aggressive. They were the people who finally destroyed the legions of Rome. So they have been for thousands of years aggressives, okay? So they've decided that they can't win by war. World War I, World War II, So they're not going to get their plans of world domination through war. So they've decided to do it through private partnerships with governments. And they came up with this this plan from the World Economic Forum, all right? And the idea is for the governments to go through a reset and then hand over power to the globalists. And you know, we've been told what's going to happen here, all right, and what their plans are for the world. Here's a thing that happens with evil. Evil has to tell you what it's going to do before it does it. It's just a fact. So how the evil side looks at things is, if you don't stand up against it and you let it happen, then you agree with it. They believe that you agree with it because you haven't fought against it. There's a lot, like a negotiation, you go to a Congress, you decide what is, what isn't, treaties, all that stuff. No, that's not what happens. They tell you what they're going to do, and they don't tell you why they're going to do it, but they're going to tell you what they're going to do before they do it. And if you don't stand up against it, you acquiesce, then that's your vote that it's a good thing, okay? And they'll use this whole climate globalist New Green Deal, I don't know what you call it.
Climate change.
Climate misery. I have a word to use that rhymes with puckery. Like, you know, pucks you use for playing ice hockey, but I just call it climate puckery. It's sick, all right? And the idea behind it, and it said on the 10 Commandments of the Georgia Guidestones, is reduce the population of the world to a manageable 500 million people for the globe. Now there's 7 point something, heading towards 8 point something billion people on the planet, and they want to go to 500 million to protect the planet. Well, it's not really, that's what it's about. They want a technocratic one world government in which they can have both a world here and a world within the cyberverse. They want to meld those two together. And this is about a religion of technocracy, that they can be the gods of the next world by having the power through this cyber life. All right. And if we don't stand up against it, the first thing is you got to know what's happening. So the digital dollar, the 15-minute city, the taking your privacy, taking away your right to speak, taking away your right to protect yourself. Okay. Finally, they'll take away your right to have a heartbeat. You have to stand up against it now, or they'll believe that you've acquiesced and they'll move forward. But if you stand up against it, they'll stop. They'll try to find another way around, and you'll have to stand up against that next. But that's the only way we can do that. We have to say no to it. We have to stand up, and if we have to protest, we just have to protest, okay? And if you know it's coming and everybody's talked about it, they're not going to do it. They're not going to. That would be tantamount to setting their plan on fire, all right? So now we're off to China. So China is being more open to the world right now, economically, through trade and exchange, because the United States has kind of sort of backed off on some restrictions, right? And but at the same time, China's working diligently to control the South China Sea and the Malacca Strait. Now, just like Iran wants the straits around Arabia, China wants the South China Sea and that Malacca Strait so that they can control shipping, and if they get a chance, some of the smaller islands, and then, of course, the Panama Canal. They want to control the Pacific, and to the extent they can, part of the Indian Ocean. Now, they've expanded their territory without legal rights all the way over to some so they've had, I gotta flip the page, I'm out of sync here. Anyway, you know, we have a coastal patrol, right? Well, so does China, and they send out their coastal patrols, ships, and they tried to stop a small cargo carrying ship that was going out to service the needs of one of the outlying Philippine islands. And their Coast Guard, the Chinese Coast Guard, decided to ram this vessel, you know, that was just moving goods out to the islands. But what they didn't know was the head of the Filipino Defense Forces was on that boat. They hit a boat with the top naval individual in the Philippines. It's a bad idea. So this information is moving out into the blogosphere and also out into the news pretty quickly that this has been happening. Now, we used to have, at the same time, we used to have a Trans-Pacific Partnership. There was going to be a big organization of trade between the West and the East. Now, since that's failed, they're doing the same thing, but they're going not by entire regions, but nation by nation. And so we're having more soft power being extended from China into places like Colombia, Nicaragua, Central America, Peru, and also other Asian countries as well. So what we have is really two major expansions countries, and they're Iran and China. That's our number one problem here in the United States and the West, okay, because of their expansionism. And they have to expand to protect their power, okay, so we have to expect them to do it. Now, Russia is more defensive rather than offensive, but Iran and China are going to be offensive, and they're going to get away with as much as they absolutely can, up until the point where they believe they have the capacity to go to war and neutralize the nations that are in their way. Okay? They'll use soft power until they get to that point. So we're going to have to expect, a lot of bad things from Iran and China. Now, remember, we're seeing a global struggle over the one world leader. You've got the EU group with the WEF and the Crown of England, right? You've got the Iranian faction, you have the Chinese faction, and you also have people that aspire to that in other countries, like Turkey recreating the great civilization they had that they controlled right up until World War II, right? And so we're going to have to watch this. Now, they're going to try, and there's a global struggle over who is going to control the world and be the one world leader. We don't know who it's going to happen. Now, personally, I don't want the one world leader. I think every nation should have their own leader and that people should have their autonomy. But the struggle is going to be in that direction, and eventually they will get there according to prophecy in the Bible, which is interesting. Now, I've looked at that a little bit, and it says that once they get to that control, that one world leader, they're going to have 7 years of, great opportunity and plenty. And then it says after that, they'll have 7 years of famine. Basically like what happened with Israel going into Egypt, right? It will be, history isn't exactly the same, but it kind of looks a lot alike, right? And so prophecy is like that. It takes you from one area of history and shows you what's going to change, but in a different period of history. And that showed up in the Bible, and so that just goes along with what we're seeing right now. So we shouldn't be surprised that it's happening. And of course, these folks are going to want to control every part of your life, right down to your heartbeat, your mental condition, your children. It doesn't matter. They want the absolute control of it. And of course, we know about the South China Sea and the Philippine Coast Guard, and that the Philippine Minister of Defense was on that boat. So now we've got in Congress 2 sides going on. We've got the old guard that wants to go towards the globalist faction, and we've got the new guard that's saying, no, we want to stop that, okay? Stop that movement, control our borders, and have autonomy over our civilians here in the United States. So that's going on in Congress and the administration right now, and of course, along with other Western powers. And as we get closer to this election, they see this as a kind of a do or die thing. If they don't get this opportunity, it will set it back years. Just like Agenda 2021 got pushed way back because of Trump, and they lost like 4 years. Well, they don't want to lose 4 years again, and so we've got 1 year in this election cycle going, and you have to be aware that there's going to be all kinds of chaos. Mm-hmm. There's going to be false flags. There's going to be rumors of wars. There's going to be everything you can imagine that they can get away with to try to move towards that is going to happen. It's going to be, a short-term battle, but that's what's coming down the pipe now. So you're going to see things like we're messing around with your censorship, right? You're going to see they're going to mess around with the economy, food, transportation, being able to travel by air, just whatever they can do to gain the next foothold on what they want to occur and be able to justify it. So that's kind of my report for Monday. We've kind of seen a lot of this going on and moving in that direction towards the big globalist utopia, which of course we know will not, even if it has a lot of plenty to begin with, it'll end up in famine quite quickly. So I don't want to see that. I would like people to have choice over their lives, and particularly over their religions. And, that's my personal stand on things. Ellie, do you have anything to talk about?
No. Subscribe and share and hit the like button and ring my bell.
So that's really what we have about Monday. We have some other things, that have gone on, but I don't think they rise to the level of importance of this other craziness as we head into this election cycle. We have to also be cognizant that former President Trump has been pushed through the washing machine every way that they can think to do it to get him to bow out of the race. So they're afraid he and the people who, the American First groups, will stop this agenda, right? Put the brakes on it, and they don't want to see that, and so they've done everything that they can do to dissuade him. Well, we know in the past we've had presidents that couldn't be dissuaded, and we've had folks that are running for office that couldn't be dissuaded, and they ended up in a casket. So we have to be very, very cognizant that they may try to do that with President Trump. Now, if everybody's watching, if everybody's expecting it, and everybody's looking for it, that would be very, very hard for them to be involved that way. So the way to be able to protect the candidates is to put your eyes on them and be with them. That's where they'll find safety.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to be looked at. And that's important at this point. This year is just going to be crazy. And, between Congress not wanting to fund Ukraine and Israel, for that matter, without actual control of our own border, it's a big fight in Congress right now. And they've, Zelensky hasn't come to talk to all the Congress. He's just come to talk to the Senate. And the Senate can approve that funding if they get a 2/3 vote. Right. And so far it's just been a 50-50 vote. And so they're bringing in Zelensky to see if they can get that vote up. All right. And it's really coming down to the line as to whether Ukraine is going to continue on in a war footing rather than a negotiation footing right now in Congress today. So that's happening. Thanks, Ellie. We've looked at all this, and yeah. Monday.
More news tomorrow.
Pardon?
More news tomorrow.
More news tomorrow with Ellie?
Yeah.
And what type of news are you going to be looking at?
I got weather and lifestyle news, and then I got the news like you got tonight, world news, and well, I want to probably talk about Sheila Jackson Lee lost her suit
Oh,
or lost her
yeah,
election. Now she wants back in Congress.
yeah. So that's inside business and politics. I think that Ellie is better at the civilian perspective, and I'm more of the, I don't know, global power perspective person. So we hope you get a balance of all the information that we can get out to you. And thank you, Ellie, for the opportunity to contribute here. And I'll probably be with you Wednesday, right?
Yes. Yep. You're
All
moving
right.
on.
So we're going to let y'all go for the day, for the afternoon. Please have a good afternoon if you can, and enjoy your families and your time together with those you love. All right. We're off. We'll see you again
Tomorrow.
Tuesday. All right. Same bat channel, same bat time. Bye, guys.
Okay, William.